So, welcome to another Evening With. My guest today is Tony Davison, the Commercial Director for Northampton Saints. Tony, thank you for joining me. I'm going to ask you the question that we've asked a lot of people so far. At the end of lockdown, you've got a table booked at your favourite restaurant for 4 people, including yourself. Who would be your 3 guests and why?
I think the toughest question there is obviously the first answer you'd always give is the wife and kids. But assuming that they're not allowed to come, then I probably wouldn't invite them anyway. and there's a whole different set of ways you can kind of answer that question, aren't there? I mean, you could go along Jeff Bezos is really interesting, all that kind of thing. But I think we are kind of, if you like, living through a bit of history here with COVID, and there's an opportunity there to almost to kind of look back, if you like, at the last 3 months and think of and be sat in a room with some people who've done interesting, unusual, or different things through that period. I mean, I think you'd always be tempted to throw in the odd sort of personal hero, but I've resisted the temptation to have, a Sunderland legend, Charlie Hurley, in there, who no one's ever heard of, because I don't think, because no one else has ever heard of him.
Yeah.
But I think, even if you narrow it down to COVID, if you think of the people who, would have been on that list almost 12 weeks ago, the people who've kind of had an impact, some of which I hadn't even heard of, all that back in February, like it's a different world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think...
who would be your first guest?
Well, I'm going to knock off some of the ones where I sort of included in the initial, because I had a very long list at the beginning.
Okay.
So people like, Ricky Gervais has been a lot of fun. I love the Michael Jordan documentary. Yeah. Saints, we're looking at that as an option for a sort of revenue generator and also lifting the profile. There's a guy online called Carol Sikora, who's been a professor, being given sort of really positive news about COVID. And I think having someone from the centre of government would be really interesting at this dinner as well. But I've kind of narrowed that down as well, but I'll come on to that when I go on to person 3. But person number 1, I don't think you can talk about the lockdown without including Captain Tom.
Yep, absolutely.
I think, when everybody was just starting to hit that real kind of, that real dip, that, God, this is real, everyone's locked down, what's going on? There's this guy who, he served out in Burma, which is the same place my grandfather served out in the Second World War, and led a really sort of normal, everyday kind of life for 99 years. Apparently he was on Blankety Blank once, which was kind of the highlight of his life to that point. And then all of a sudden, if there's ever an idea that's never too late to do something amazing, Captain Tom sums that up, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think if you look back at the first sort of 4 weeks of lockdown, he was the light, he was the sunshine, and what he did was started from that, and it's just, it's huge, massive, and for his age as well to be able to do that. And
the thing it might be up to, if you include the sort of the tax benefits, etc., it could be 40 million quid. We've at the Saints, I don't know if you saw the face coverings that we went on sale with a few months ago. That's raised money for the NHS charities, and I don't think people even knew there was such a thing as NHS charities almost. So we've gone and done this by having been inspired by Captain Tom.
I think the door, mine's in my work bag, and I stopped myself from putting it on when you first came on because I didn't want to give you a fright. But I've got myself with the same mask, and my son won't go anywhere without it.
And it's it's something that in this country we wouldn't have thought was possible, that people would wear face masks. People just wouldn't. You almost laughed at people when you're travelling in Asia or whatever, wearing face masks around the street. But now, if it's something that can help stop the spread, and again, as I say, this whole almost new appreciation for the NHS. I think, and that's from a business point of view, it is going to be really interesting whether there's a fundamental change in sponsorships, etc. If we can help for companies to reach out to their local community as well by giving that a bit of power, I think that could be a new way for us to, if you like, a new market almost for us to go into. Look, how can we help you engage with the local community?
Yeah, absolutely. So, guest number 2, alongside you and Captain Tom.
I've got Marcus Rashford.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Again, and that leading nicely on, if you like, from Captain Tom. Well, he was never too old, and you're, by the same token, this is a young man who's, it's never too young. And the Saints Foundation is obviously a big part of the club, and a lot of what they do is about reaching out to kids who normally wouldn't have a chance in life, to try and give them the right start. And who'd have ever thought something simple phrases like "we want to feed children" and "Black Lives Matter" would be in any way controversial? It's somehow controversial that Marcus Rashford wants to help kids who wouldn't normally have access to food have food. But he's stuck his head above the parapet there, and he's raised 20 million quid, as well as being probably the brightest young talent in the country at the moment on the football field. So I think having that, if you like, that awareness is probably the right word, that you can do something.
Totally agree. The traction that it's got in the last couple of days, and reading more about it, you don't generally hear that many good stories about footballers. So to hear that giving back, especially to his community, the schoolings and everything, I think he's massively impressive. Yeah, hats off.
I think a lot of sports people, do it to one degree or another. We know with our guys that all volunteer to help the maternity nurses move into the gardens, and you've got the footballers, rugby players just doing their bit, and they don't normally get the credit they deserve for doing that. But for as I say, a young man like Marcus Rashford, it would have been far easier for him to kind of to almost do nothing. But he's still in there in his own community. I lived in Cheshire for a little while, which is not far from where kind of Marcus was born and raised. And you look at the Wythenshawe estate where he's raised, and there are social issues there. And obviously from where I'm from originally, Sunderland, and Northampton itself has got issues. And if sport and sports people can do something to help alleviate that, then we should.
Absolutely.
We absolutely should.
No pressure. Guest number 3.
I think it would be really interesting to speak to someone who was right in the room, in the Cobra meetings, when all of this was actually going on. Yeah. And there aren't many people who can kind of come out of that with credit almost. The world has almost turned against the government because everyone's under a lot of strain and everyone's under a lot of stress. I think Boris, having walked the last election almost, is now down in the polls, having a tough time of it. So I think Boris will be interesting, but I didn't go for Boris. I think Dominic Cummings will be very interesting.
Yeah.
To come for a meal and maybe have an eye test while he's there.
I was going to say, it depends whether he could drive there or not, doesn't it, I suppose?
Yeah, and I think that will be a really interesting conversation to have. Just, what were you thinking? And I think at the beginning, if it had been a case of, he drove to isolate with his family and then drove back again, there would have been a completely different narrative. But this trip to, being from the northeast, I know Barnard Castle fairly well.
Yeah. And
it's just a little, it's the same as, for me living in Oxfordshire, just having a little drive out to Chinner kind of thing. It's a little market town, but for that to split the nation the way it has. Again, I kind of like the dinner to be positive.
Yeah.
So he's not coming to dinner either.
No.
So I've ended up going for Rishi Sunak.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because it was someone who before COVID we'd never heard of. No. A real junior minister. And I think a lot of the people listening to this would be, small businesses, etc. And depending on how you almost administer your small business, you'll think he's a hero or you'll think he's a villain.
Yeah.
Because there is this group of small businesses that have been missed out, if you like, by government help. And there's a lot of people who are, where furlough has been a big help. My wife is a one-man band, self-employed. She's been able to access help from the government. yet there are small businesses who haven't been able to access it. But you've kind of got this guy who's just appeared on the scene, and when every other government minister looked like a rabbit in the headlights, he was very, very sort of calm and was able to kind of, if you like, settle the markets and settle the country from a business point of view. That, you know, we are going to try to help everyone get out of this.
Yeah.
So and I just think when you read about his background, etc., as well, you know, he's got a fair amount of, if you like, privilege in his background, but at the same time, he isn't a career politician. He is someone who's had a job, and he is someone who, from an economic point of view, you kind of want to have that job. You know, his background means he's perfectly suited. You can't help but think that he is a future Prime Minister.
I totally agree with you. We went through the roller coaster of emotions in that first couple of weeks, and I remember Ben here. I think his exact words were, "I could kiss him," because he was cool, he was calm, he was collective, and he told the nation what they needed to hear. And it is difficult, that position of power, having to please everybody, but obviously still make those business decisions. And yeah, I do. I think I totally agree with you. I think he is a future Prime Minister. Well, I hope he's a future Prime Minister, because he will be amazing.
I mean, what would you say to if you had sort of Dominic Cummings or Boris or you know what?
I don't know what I'd say. The Dominic Cummings thing is so prominent, but it opened up. The rule book just got torn in half. And that it divided the country, I believe, more than anything had for quite a while. But yeah, I'd love to be a fly on the wall more. I would, after hearing everyone's answers on these, I'd love to be a fly on the wall and have them all in the same room at the same time, to hear the conversations and how everybody would speak, and how, especially Boris Johnson, but how they go to sleep at night with the pressure that they're under and the decisions that they make being under the microscope is phenomenal. Well, that is, I mean, that table is, it effectively sums up the last 10 to 12 weeks of being in lockdown. That you've got two solid heroes, and I think you'll have a third hero, with whether that's in 6 weeks or 6 years. We'll look back at Rishi and go, you were the saviour, you were the shining light of that. So that's a brilliant table. So thank you very much, Tony. Hopefully it won't be too long until you can actually go out and enjoy a meal, and if luck's on your side, you can get those 3 people. So we wish the Saints all the best when the season returns, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Fraser. Thank you. It was a lot of fun.